Hello, thank you all for being here once again in my podcast called A Legacy of Love, in Spanish, Un Legado de Amor. And I feel very honored, very thrilled, and blessed today to introduce to you Powerful Eric. Hi, Powerful Eric, and why do you call yourself like that?
Hi, well, thanks for having me here. And I don't call myself Powerful Eric out of having a big ego. It's quite the opposite. I was deeply in an addiction to pornography and sexual acting out. And I sought help. And the programs I went into use what's called the disease-based model of addiction. And a lot of these programs, uh, they have you say, hi, my name is Eric. I'm a sexaholic or alcoholic, whatever it is. And I'm powerless over porn or I'm powerless over alcohol. And it's been X amount of days since I've been sober. And in the programs, it's it says we were powerless. They have you say we were powerless over whatever it is. And but it's not, it's interpreted as we are powerless. And so I threw myself wholeheartedly into these programs, and I ended up getting worse because then I started identifying with the problem. I started brushing the teeth of a sex and porn addict. And so it finally one day it wasn't working, and I found I was making a login and password for an app, and I just decided to make my login as Powerful Eric. And in that moment, pitiful, powerless Eric died and powerful Eric was born. God don't make no junk. God didn't make us to be powerless. And so that's how the name Powerful Eric came about.
Wow, well, that's very interesting. Now I understand. Do you have a story, which I believe that we all do? That's why I'm doing my podcast, that you would love to share? Or before we were recording, you mentioned a little bit about an organization helping women or children that have been trafficked. Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's an organization that I've been supporting for a long time. Even years ago, I had uh, found interest in this organization, OUR. It's the Underground Railroad. It's founded by Tim Ballard. They actually made a movie about this man. It's called The Sound of Freedom. And the movie was so successful that it beat Indiana Jones. Like there was a new Indiana Jones movie at the time. It beat Indiana Jones in the box office when Indiana Jones was showing on at least twice as many screens, and it still beat it. And that movie is the story of Tim Ballard. And I talk about having honor and respect for a person. I have so much honor and respect for this man. He literally goes into very dangerous situations to actually physically rescue children that are sex trafficked. And that movie is about that exact thing. And I get my hair on my arms is standing up right now because there's a moment
Goosebumps.
in the movie where they had rescued this child and they opened this van door, and this kid was about the I have a 5-year-old boy and I have a 9-year-old boy, and this kid was approximately 4 or 5, something like that. And when they opened the door in the movie, this kid just looked so frightened, and I thought of my boys. Like, what if that was my kid? What if, and it just it just broke my heart. And I don't want anybody to have to go through anything like that. And um, and I thought of my connection to this. My connection is through pornography, because pornography drives the demand
Yes.
for trafficking. Now, there's a movie on a documentary on Netflix right now that I know is paid for by one of these big pornographers, and they're trying to separate sex trafficking from pornography. They're trying to say, oh, no, these are just willing people. These are sex workers that want to do this. This has nothing to do with sex trafficking. There's nothing to see here. Move along, move
Mm.
along. Well, that's not true. Sex trafficking, human trafficking is a part of pornography. And so if myself, I'm a sex and porn addiction recovery coach now. I've come full circle. And if I can help reduce the demand,
Yes,
if there's no demand, then there's no, there's no human trafficking, sex trafficking needed. And by the way, when you hear the words human trafficking, that means sex trafficking. Usually it may start off as something else, like maybe working in a hotel or something like that. But the ultimate goal is to get those people to sex trafficking. That's where they make their big money. And so if you haven't seen the movie Sound of Freedom, I highly recommend it. The guy that plays the main character in it played Jesus Christ in the Passion of the Christ many years ago.
yes.
He's the guy that plays Tim Ballard, and so I just feel so strongly about this. We were saying before we hit the record button here that, when I first started doing this, I thought, oh, my job is to help men stop viewing porn or sexual acting out, which is still a big part of it. But I learned quickly that it's not just that, but it's to help men become the best version of themselves.
I agree. And by the way, I did watch the movie Sound of Freedom, and it was extremely touching because it really resonates with my past and what I had to go through as a young girl. And it was a very powerful story, and it's very true. Normally, all this happens because there's money involved, and whether it's a relative, normally it's someone that knows you, and you trust them, and being in their hands. But honestly, this continues to be more of the norm, which it shouldn't be a norm. It should be taken, and there should be change. And for those kids, it breaks my heart as a mother, and it breaks my heart knowing that I understand that kind of environment. And our job is to bring people to the reality that you just mentioned. We cannot keep that hidden, or that doesn't add up to this other. It does add up, and it has a lot of relevance, and they connect together. So if you help someone heal from pornography, then we're going to stop this other problem of human trafficking. And I agree with you. You're right.
Yeah. And it's more prevalent than anyone would possibly believe. I live in the heart of the United States in St. Louis, Missouri. So whether people know it here or not, it's alive. Sex trafficking is alive and well in here. Texas, of course, that's number one. I mean, that's a major because of being on the border there, huge sex trafficking through there. And it's it's heartbreaking. I mean, we're talking about kids. I mean, and this firsthand. Um, so I just one day, when I was going through all these different recovery programs, I really wanted to get better and I wasn't. So I went out on my own. I found alternative, different type of therapies. For example, there's something called the emotional freedom technique, or EFT. Um, the programs that I was going in were started in the 1930s, and there's a lot has changed. There's a lot more new methods of going over, overcoming things now. And that's one of the things that I like to do is use the emotional freedom technique. And then, but the number one thing I like to use is identity change. Looking at yourself as a different person. It doesn't matter if you don't have to be addicted to porn or sex or anything like that. If you want to change your life, change the way that you look at yourself. If you want to be a musician, then I don't know, get a guitar, start playing the guitar. And if you declare to the world, hey, I'm a musician now, then okay, like we have to take your word for it. Like if you play the guitar and you're a musician, like, so identity is huge in this. I
Mhm.
used to brush the teeth of a sex and porn addict. Now I brush the teeth of powerful Eric.
I love
And
it.
I feel so bad for a lot of these programs, that people that are in these programs, they want to get better, But I know what happens. You start to identify with the addiction. And so identity, identity change, it's huge. It's powerful. It works.
I agree. And well, I actually have shared in my previous podcast that even though we go through all kinds of seasons and horrendous pasts, our identity shouldn't be there. I think that my identity, as I was going through all the stages in my life, and they were not easy, I realized that my identity was in Christ as his daughter. And I think you are on the same boat. And I think that that is extremely powerful. And obviously, he's going to call us to higher standards, and we have to meet those standards. That's how I see it. And I would love for you to leave us with a last couple of minutes message. What would you say for people if
Well,
they're listening right now and they're dealing with these kind of addictions?
yeah. To try to do this without a spiritual side is going the long road. I mean, these sexual matters go to the very heart of a person. And I feel so blessed and honored to do what I do because when I help a man, I literally feel like, our hearts are touching because it goes to the core of them as a human being. And in that core, of course, is our soul. And so it's like I'm soul to soul. And it's just it's such a great um it's just such a great feeling. I kind of lost my train of thought there.
That's
um
fine.
what was your
We
question?
would love, we would love to have a minute or two of a message, a last minute message regarding this topic.
Well, that there certainly is hope. Um, you know, I I remember one guy who was really bad off. Like, just to give you an idea, a little bit, this guy, in addition to the pornography, had been with over 250 prostitutes. And to be real honest, I was like, I don't know if I can help this guy. Like, this is really extreme. Uh, and I was able to. And by helping him change the way that he sees himself, instead of like, yes, you have to acknowledge that you have a problem and that you're addicted. But you don't have to look in your mirror every day and say, I'm a sexaholic, I'm a porn addict. Like, that's not helping. In the beginning, it's necessary and needed. But after that, you need to move on. And so maybe here's something I'd like to leave you with. There is a story about this giant statue, this giant. Uh, some say the story is about a giant golden Buddha. Others say it's a giant golden Christ. But anyway, so there's this giant golden Christ that these monks had made, and they knew an invading army was coming. So they thought, well, we've got to disguise the giant Christ because it will be melted down for the gold. So
Hmm.
they covered it in clay and dirt, and their plan did work. The invading army came. They did not find the golden Christ. However, they killed all the monks that knew that it was there. So it literally sat there for over 200 years. And one day, a monk was outside praying and he noticed a crack and some light coming out. And he went to investigate and he unearthed this golden Christ. And that's the story of my clients. That's everyone's story. Like, God don't make no junk. We are gold, whether we realize it or not. If you think you're a piece of poo, or you think you're like you're not. You at your heart, at your soul, you are gold. And I would say if you're struggling with something right now, that you're just covered in this muck and the trials and challenges and traumas of life, and that's what I feel like. In the beginning, I thought, oh, I just help guys remove this muck.
Hmm.
But then I quickly realized that it's it's more than that. It's to help them come up to polish the gold and have them come up with a superhero name or a power name or a Christ name or a higher self name, whatever you want to call it. And these guys absolutely love this, by the way.
Yes.
So if you are feeling some type of challenge in your life, it doesn't have to be an addiction, but I challenge you, just what's your power name. Not that you're going to go introduce yourself like this. I don't introduce myself on the street as Powerful Eric. They'd be like, "Who's this egomaniac?" But what's your power name? And then I have them come up with their superpowers. What are three superpowers that you have? And now for my clients, though, I have them come up like if somebody is like the one guy was a compulsive liar, so his superpower then became honesty.
Hmm.
So my thing was being completely powerless. So my superhero qualities are being bold, brave, and confident.
Uh-huh. Wow. Well,
So,
thank
so I
you.
challenge the listener, no matter what you're going through, because to come up with your power name or your superhero name. There's always the old saying, like, what would Jesus do? What would Christ do? For me, that is so high. Like that is like, almost it's like seemingly unattainable. But if I can bring it down a little more to like a smaller level for me, it's like, okay, this is my power name, this is my superhero name. And that's kind of like my connection to Jesus.
Yes. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for being here today. And I think that we take that for us today. Where we're taking is the fact that we should try to see something positive in ourselves, what power or how God sees us. And I think that there will be transformation and restoration in our lives. And thank you for being here and have a wonderful day. Thank you, Eric.
My pleasure. And if I could add one thing, I do come bearing
Sure.
gifts. I do come bearing gifts. If someone is struggling with this, I'd be happy to send them a copy for free of my audiobook, Everything You Know About Sex and Porn Addiction is Wrong, or my other book, #1 Amazon bestseller, Think Big. So if you send me an email to eric@powerfuleric.com, I'd be happy to send you those resources.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for coming. And I know that this will be a blessing for those that are listening today.
Thank you.
Thank you.